Okay, so we missed out the most important topic. Okay, so today we'll just cover it and after that we'll get an idea, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. So I was just expecting Halima to join. So let's just wait for 1 more minute, okay? So that we can start. 1 more minute and then I will start.
Okay,
Okay,
ma'am.
okay. Halima is here.
Good evening.
Good evening, Halima. How are you?
I'm fine.
Okay. So we were waiting for you, Sana and me.
Okay,
Okay.
let's start.
Yes. Okay. So basically, we missed out the most important topic, which was budgetary expenditure, right? So I'm so sorry for that. I thought we have done that. Okay. So budgetary expenditure, right? So what is budgetary expenditure basically? See, a revenue receipt we have done, whatever amount we are receiving, but expenditure, whatever amount you are giving or whatever amount you are spending. So it refers to estimated expenditure of the government on its development and non-development program or on its plan and non-plan program during a fiscal year. So what is, if I'll ask you what is budget expenditure of, or if I'll ask you what is budgetary expenditure. So that means a budget, that is always an estimation, right? So you have to write, it refers to estimated expenditure of the government on its development and non-development program or on its plan and non-plan program during a fiscal year. So basically, it is the expenditure of the government, and now where government is spending the money. Government is spending either on development and non-development program or on its plan and non-plan program, and when during a fiscal year. So this is budgetary expenditure. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So quickly write it down. Budgetary expenditure, this and this. Then we'll just basically it is of 3 types, right? So what first one is revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. Second one is development expenditure, non-development expenditure. Third one is plan expenditure, non-plan expenditure. Clear? So budgetary expenditure is of 3 types: first, second, third. Hello Mahdi, good evening.
Done.
Done, ma'am.
Okay, so now next one is now we are going to do the difference, okay, which I gave you in the exam, but sadly it was not part of like what I taught. Okay, so first one is revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. Okay, if you are now we'll just have a look like what happens when we do expenditure. Okay, so for example, whenever we spend money, right, whenever we do expenditure, so what will happen, either what you are doing, you have two things, one is asset and other one is liability, right, if you remember. So when you are spending your money, what will happen, if you are spending your money, that means there will be addition, right? For example, you bought a new car, so your assets usually increase, but your liability decrease. For example, you are spending money, that means you are repaying the loan, right? You are paying the a loan which you took from bank or somebody else. So basically, usually what happens, over expenditure, your assets usually increase, and what about liability, it always decrease. Okay, for expenditure, like somewhere for receipt, it was, if you're receiving money, so that was what was, your assets were decreasing usually, right, but your liability was increasing, right? But opposite, assets, when you spend money, that means you're purchasing something, and liability, that means you're repaying, so that will fall down. Clear? This one is clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now revenue expenditure. Revenue is basically it's R. So that means this is good one. Okay. But C is not always good. You know, there also we did RR, revenue receipt and capital receipt. So RR was very good. So these expenditure do not create assets. Do not create assets. Okay. So what they are doing, they are not creating. There they were not creating assets, not affecting liabilities. Right. But here similarly, these expenditure do not create assets for the government. So they are not creating any assets, but capital expenditure, they create assets. Okay, so these you are getting it. Revenue receipt means government is expending the money, but they are not creating any asset. For example, I am paying pension to the old people. So old people, they are not working, right? But still, as a government, I have to pay them the pension. So that is what, like, I am paying money, but in return, my assets are not increasing. Like, they are not working. Okay, and unemployment allowance. Unemployment allowance is basically is given to those people who are not working. So they are not working. They are not working for the economic growth. So that's why these expenditure comes under revenue expenditure. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Halima? Mahdi? Halima didn't get it?
Yes, ma'am, I got it.
Okay. And now capital expenditure. So these creates assets for government. Example, see, these people with this capital expenditure, they'll create the asset. So what, for example, I constructed the building. So of course that building will give me lots of benefits, right? So the addition of assets will be there. So capital expenditure, these creates building. For example, I purchased some shares. So of course there is an increase in assets. Next, these do not cause any reduction in liability. So revenue, they are not causing any reduction in liability. For example, I am paying salaries. I am giving scholarship. As a government, I am giving subsidies. So these expenditure I am doing, but it's of no use. They are not causing my liability. They are not decreasing my liability. But capital expenditure, these cause reduction in liability of the government. That is repayment of loan. When you repay the loan, that will automatically leads to decrease in your liabilities, right? These expenditure are recurring. Recurring means again and again. See, every month I have to pay pension, every month I have to pay employment allowance, every month I have to give salaries to my employers, every month I have to give, every year I have to give scholarship and subsidies, right? But these are non-recurring. For example, you repaid the loans, once in a while you will be doing it, once in a while you'll be constructing the building, and that will be long lasting, it will be working for 20 to 25 years, right? So these are non-recurring. Again and again you don't have to pay for the same thing, but here they are recurring. Salaries every month, unemployment allowance every month, scholarship every year, or you can say after every 3 or 6 months, right? So here overall assets and liabilities are not affected, okay, but assets and liabilities are affected. Clear? Revenue and capital one.
Yes, ma'am.
Here.
Okay. So quickly we'll have a look again. Revenue expenditure, they do not create assets for the government. That is, government is paying, like government is spending money on old age pension or unemployment allowance. But they create asset. For example, government is spending their money on construction of building or purchase of shares. Second, they do not cause any loss in reduction in liability. That means I'm paying salaries, I'm giving scholarship to students, I'm giving subsidies. But here they cause reduction in liability of the government. That is, I'm repaying the loan. These are recurring because again and again you have to pay. Every month you have to pay. But these are non-recurring. Once in a while you have to pay. And assets and liabilities are not affected, but assets and liabilities are affected. Clear? So you'll write difference between revenue expenditure and capital expenditure in this table. Okay, done?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Decided.
Done, ma'am.
Okay, both of you done?
Yes, done.
Okay, now next one is difference between development expenditure and non-development expenditure. Okay, so now what is development? What is non-development? So development expenditure directly contribute to the flow of goods and services, right? So that means whatever I am doing, whatever work I'll do, that will leads to flow of goods and services, right? But non-development, they directly contribute. Okay, I am spending my money, right? So that will directly lead to inflow of goods and services. But non-development expenditure indirectly contribute to flow of goods and services, right? Next, development expenditure is productive in nature as it adds to the flow of goods and services. So, but non-development is not productive in nature as it does not add to flow of goods and services directly. Okay, so it is productive in nature, it is non-productive in nature. For example, I'm spending my money on development of agriculture sector. So what will happen? I am focusing on agriculture sector, so somewhere after few months there will be crops, and that will help me to that will increase the production, right? And similarly, if I'm working on industrial sector, there will be more production in industrial sector, transport sector, right? But for example, I'm spending my money on administration, defense and justice. For example, this is a building. I'm I'm giving spending my money on the building, like the administration, defense, and everyone, like providing them proper facilities. For defense also, I'm providing them proper weapons and all that, right? So what is happening? Somewhere it is important, right? But somewhere it is defense people are working, like the army is working, they are indirectly why we need to focus on defense and all that, because they are the protector. If we'll not make our defense strong, then we people are not safe, right? So somewhere we can see here, you can directly see you are focusing on agriculture. Next, after few months you will get the crops, you can sell that crops, you will get money. But here you are of course contributing in the administration, defense and all that, but as such, there is no direct contribution for flow of goods and services, right? So that's why it comes under non-development expenditure, and development expenditure, it comes under this. So development expenditure directly contribute to flow of goods and services. Non-development indirectly contribute to flow of goods and services. Development productive in nature as they are adding the flow of goods and services. Non-development non-productive in nature as it does not add. And over here, expenditure and development of agriculture sector, industry and transport, expenditure and administration, defense and justice. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Clear.
You can write.
Done, ma'am.
Okay, both of you done.
Yes.
Now the last part is a plan expenditure and non-plan expenditure. Okay, so it is within the scope of government plan. So see, plan is basically, for example, I have my plan that tomorrow I'll from 1 p.m. to 2, 1 to 2 I'll do this, 2 to 3 I'll do this, 3 to 4 I'll do this. Okay, but somewhere, for example, suddenly my friend called me out. Okay, that we have a meeting at, for example, I got a call that we have meeting at 1:30. So of course my entire schedule will be disturbed, right? So that is like this meeting is not under my control. This meeting is not under my scope. So plan expenditure, it is within the scope because I'm planning these things, like one to these things were under the plan scope, but this meeting which is being conducted at 1:30, this is not under the scope. So it is within the scope of government plan, but it is out of scope of government plans. Okay. It shows expenditure to be incurred on project covered under the central plan. So central means government are planning, whatever government are planning, you have to do spending, you have to do expenditure on that sector only. Okay. But it shows expenditure to be incurred on project not covered in the central plan. For example, I made a plan that I'll be spending money on my dress, my books, my shoes. Okay, so this is like these are planned expenditure, but somewhere my sister told me that she wanted a mobile phone. Okay, so this is non-planned, right? So the list which I bought with me was this. This is a plan expenditure. So it shows expenditure to be incurred on project covered under central plan, but it shows expenditure to be incurred on project not covered under central plan. That was not under my. This mobile phone was not under my plan, right? And example, expenditure in electricity generation. See, electricity is a need. We have to. Rural development, road, bridge. These are the part of central plans. But for example, suddenly earthquake came, right? And the building collapsed. Now I have to construct the building. As a government, it's my duty, right? So expenditure on relief of earthquake victim, construction of houses demolished during the flood, all that. So that will come under non-planned expenditure. Okay, because that was something which I didn't thought that I'll be spending money on, right? So plan, this is within the scope, it is out of the scope. It shows expenditure to be incurred on project covered under central plan. It shows expenditure to be incurred on project not covered under central plan. Example, expenditure on electricity generation, rural development, road bridge, and expenditure on relief of earthquake victims, construction of house demolished due to floods. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you can write.
Done.
Done, ma'am.